All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Lasting Learning Podcast. Um, this week is going to be a good week because first of all, I've got an amazing guest on here with us, somebody who I look up to for a lot of reasons, and I'm sure he has no idea the impact he's had on me professionally and personally. But he's going to find out today. It's a guy that I don't even know if he remembers the first time we met, but I'll throw that out there. It's at an AMLE conference 3-ish years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was presenting and just completely blew me away. And then ever since then, he hasn't been able to shake me from his social media as much as he's tried. I've just really tried to latch on to everything he stands for as a professional and as a person. And I relate with him on so many levels. So I thought that this week I would bring Quinn Rollins on to be with us today, to talk about what it's like to live in his world, to do what he does, to be him, and to just shed some wisdom on us. Some of you know him as the Play Like a Pirate guy, or the Rubber Ducky Man, or the guy from Utah that shares all the political cartoons. Who knows what you know him as, but I'm just super excited to have you here with us, Quinn.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. And yeah, I remember AMLE. Austin, was it?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. No, I remember it well.
Very cool. So Quinn, for those that don't know you and that my introduction didn't necessarily sum it all up, can you just tell people who you are, maybe a little bit about your journey, maybe starting professionally, and then we'll go from there?
Okay, sure. So I am a history teacher. I'm in Salt Lake City, and I taught middle school for 10 years, and then I lost my soul for a while in our school district office for about 6 years. And then last year I came back to, I'm teaching high school now, teaching juniors, and I really love it. It's, I feel like it's where I'm supposed to be, which is going to cross over into personal stuff too. But yeah, love teaching. I'm a believer in finding ways to engage students that they might not be getting in their other classes, and in using your personal passions to teach. So if you love music, use music. If you love running, use running. If you love binge watching Netflix, use something else. But yeah.
If you love Lego, use Lego. If you love Play-Doh, use Play-Doh.
Right. Yeah. And that's me, is I use like Lego and action figures and graphic novels and a lot of pop culture things that have meant a lot to me and happen to reach a lot of kids. So yeah. It's good.
Absolutely. So, I talk about how I first really got to see you and experience the magic of Quinn down in Austin. And Austin, if for those people that are from Austin, I apologize. If you've never been to Austin, it is this weird, quirky place. Lots of craziness, but also it's a pretty cool, eclectic little place. And that kind of describes you too. I mean, you're kind of like this cool, eclectic guy who kind of thinks outside of the box, outside of the norm. But you're like, you seem to always be having fun with what you're doing. At least that's what it seems like.
Right. Yeah.
You wrote that book, Play Like a Pirate. Came out like 3 years ago, I think, 2016.
Yep.
Can you just really quickly talk to us about that journey? How you came about like writing a book with Dave Burgess? You were one of the first people that really jumped on board the DBC group. So where did that come from?
Yeah. So I was presenting at a national social studies conference in St. Louis, probably 2014, 2015. And I was explaining some of these ideas that I have. And because I'm a Twitter addict, I had, tweeted out, hey, come see my presentation. And enough people did and started sort of talking about it that Dave came and saw the rest of my presentation. And I'm fortunate that he liked what he saw, and he saw something that he thought might make a book. And so we talked about it. It was like a year later, at another social studies conference. We talked about it and figured it out. And thank goodness he has a great editor that works with him, because yeah, it takes me a long time to write a book, it turns out. So
I've talked to Dave Burgess quite a bit as well, and I think one of the pieces of advice I'm sure he told you is, you don't write a book just to write a book. You've already got this presentation that you do. Just basically use that presentation as your guide. Turn the presentation into a book.
right.
And that book, in a way, becomes like your business card, if you will, or
Right.
like a rock band today, it would be like their album that they sell, but it brings people to the concert, but it's
Right.
the concert that brings that connection to people. And that, I'll be honest with you, that's what resonated with me. I saw you in person first, and connected and said, oh, that's a guy right there that's got it figured out. And then I went and got the book, and the book was like that nice little supplement that I use on the back shelf that I pass out to people. And
Right.
yeah, but it's you as the person that really resonated with me. So I kind of took that shift a little bit and talk about you as a person, because you opened up the door a little bit. You said that you kind of lost your soul for 6 years at the district level. I'm a guy right now, I'm working at the district level. And it gets isolating, it gets lonely. Sometimes you feel like you're playing the game, and you get lost in that bureaucracy. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, so for me, first of all, I have to say our district is lovely, and I like the people there, and I respect the people I worked with. And for the first few years, I really liked and loved what I was doing. I got to work with a lot of teachers, and it was good. But from the very first day I was there, I missed the students, missed the kids. I don't feel like I got into education to sit in meetings, if that makes sense, isn't offensive.
Until the next meeting, yeah.
My doodling game really went up, but it was yeah. I mean, I didn't start teaching until I was 30, and it was sort of a long journey of trying different careers and seeing that I just wasn't happy over and over again. And coming back to every time I was teaching, every time I was working with kids, I was happy. And so sort of weighed finances versus happiness and decided to go the happiness route. And so that self-knowledge and self-fulfillment and finding a reason, a way to be happy, is a lot of what led me to teaching in the first place. And I lost some of that when I left the classroom. And that is about the same time that some of my unknown to me family mental health history sort of came to a head. And that has been about 8 years ago now. And went into my first serious depressions and all sorts of stuff. And we can talk about as much of that as we want to.
Okay.
But it took, I have been happier in the last 2 years or so, like going back into the classroom, making some other changes than in a while. And it's sort of hard to say that, because I want to be the happy guy. I want to be the person that people think of and like, oh, like Lego and rubber ducky and blah, fun. Because that's who I am. But I'm also, sometimes life sucks, even for happy people.
Yeah. And when I first reached out to you, just so everybody knows, I mentioned that this is kind of some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about, because on that personal level, I mean, I relate with this in a very strong way. I don't think anybody that went into education for money, fame, or notoriety. If they did, they were one of those statistics that left very, very early. Very few have stayed in it for a couple of decades. And yet somehow roads starts intersecting, and you reach those pivot points, and you start climbing the ladder and things just start happening. So let me just talk about me, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I started quickly climbing the ladder. And as a result, started trying to present this persona that was me, but it was the me that I wanted people to see. It was
Right.
that I shared with the world, but it wasn't necessarily the me who was inside. Um, and I kept a lot of that stuff hidden, and I still do keep some of that stuff hidden. Um, as I look at you, and I told you that I do some social media cyber stalking of you, and you're probably well aware of that. If you were to look at like your Twitter game or your Instagram game or whatever, there's this marked difference, I would say, just in the last 2 or 3 years, where there's now more of an openness and a willingness to share some of that.
Yeah.
I right before we came on, I was just looking at your book reviews on Amazon, and you've got like 45 5-star reviews of this book, and people just say these incredible things about you, about your work, your knowledge, your rubber ducky, like everything. It would just, some people would look at that and say, wow, that's just got to make him feel so good all the time. And I look at that because I've had some conversations with people, and I've started to open up and tell them about some of the stuff inside of me, and they say, I don't understand. Like, it seems on the surface like things are going well, and sometimes I struggle to explain that to them. Like,
right.
on the surface, it looks so great, but inside, you wrestle. So how do you how do you explain that to people that don't quite get it?
So I really think, and I don't know what. So my path through all of that has been, so I was diagnosed 8 years ago with bipolar 2, the sequel, the better one. Then it's not as severe as bipolar 1.
Yeah.
And I had elements of that going back into my 20s, maybe even into my teens. And like the ups with that kind of mental health issue are pretty great. Like, you don't have to sleep ever, and you like customize 742 Fisher Price Little People, and then you're like, oh, there's medication for this. But the downs were bad, and they were getting worse. And I think it was the change in career that sort of took the bottom out of that and made things worse.
Yeah.
And up until then, if somebody had told me they were depressed or they struggled with depression, then I would be like, oh yeah, I have bad days too. I get bummed out. Yeah, sadness is sad. But it was only after really meeting depression for the first time that I was like, wow, okay, so this is what it is. It's not just sadness, it's also a lack of motivation. It's also just, you kind of feel like you've lost everything, even though, like you said, on the surface, things are great. And I look at my life 8 years ago, and it's like, have great family, sons who I know love me, but you don't feel that. I remember when I first started going into trying to find out what was wrong with me, one of my friends who struggled with depression himself said that a doctor prescribed a dog for him. And so, that's when I got a dog again for the first time since I was a kid. And that dog, probably there were times that he saved, if saving my life is an overstatement, he saved me a lot of pain, because it was like that unconditional love, which I also had from other people in my life, but couldn't see it, like dogs, like it broke through. And it's like, oh, this needs me and I need it. Him, he's my friend. He's lucky. He's right over there sleeping. But it's really hard to explain to somebody who hasn't been through it. But I do think once you have been through it, you have that empathy and you have that compassion, and it's kind of on you to, when you see somebody going through it, to be there for them.
Right.
And if it's somebody who hasn't been through it and they're like, oh yeah, I'm sad too, I don't know how easy it is to make them understand what it's like, because until you've been through it yourself, it's awfully hard to empathize. You can be kind and you can be sympathetic, but I don't know. I think it's one of those things I don't think you know what it's like until you go through it.
Yeah.
And I don't want you to go through it. Those of you watching or listening, don't,
Absolutely.
I don't wish that on you. So
It's going to be a very crude and probably inappropriate metaphor to go along with that. But in my prior job, so obviously I'm a white middle-aged guy, but my last job, I worked in the inner city where 90% of my student population was African-American. And I heard often, you don't understand. And I would tell them, no, I get it. I'm down here. I drive into your neighborhoods. And they say, yeah, but you don't live here. You don't understand. I appreciate you trying to support us. I appreciate you trying to get to know us. But until you live it, you don't understand. Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm hearing. Like, yeah, good. Be empathetic, be supportive, but sometimes you have to have some of your own, if you will, to lean on. Who have been there and walked the walk.
Yeah, I do. The other thing that I think with mental health, and I don't know how much time we want to spend on this, but I think that it's something, over the last 2 or 3 years, I have been more open about it and more likely to talk about it, and to the point of oversharing, because that's what I do. But it wasn't until going to my parents and telling them, hey, I just got diagnosed with this, and we're looking at medication, and things have been really bad, really dark. It wasn't until then that they said, oh, well, this is a problem that your 2 uncles have had. And this is, when so-and-so died, they died in a mental hospital like 50 years ago. And we have this long family history of trying to deal with this disease. And if it had been cancer or heart disease or diabetes, it's like we would all know about it, because my parents overshare all of their ailments, but not when it comes to mental health. And I think that if more people were open about it, it's like you could find those allies, you could find people who have been there, and they might be hiding it, they might be covering it up. Like I can put up a mask really well that says, I'm fine, but there are times you're not. And I think it's important to let other people know there are times that you're not.
That's so good. So good. And I'm personalizing everything you say. So I apologize to those people that are listening to this and, and kind of like, that can't necessarily relate, but I'm truly internalizing and personalizing this, because there's so much of what you said that resonates with me. I did cover it up, and I tried to not just mask it, but tried to hide it from myself, because I was afraid that when I start opening up and going to a therapist, that means I'm crazy. When they put me on medication, that means, oh my gosh, I've got a label now. And I didn't want to admit that to myself. So I did everything in my power to overcompensate, and would be that cocky, arrogant SOB that just offended everybody because I wanted to put up that front,
I don't see that with you. I'm kind of excited. That's like alternate universe Dave. That's
no, it's trust me, there are people listening saying, yeah, I can turn off, I already know this.
All right.
It's and it's been over the last year where I've come to grips with, and I've got an issue, and as a result of this issue, I've plowed people over in my quest to try to cover things up,
Right.
And like you, I'm now to that point now where people are accusing me of oversharing, and I've had people come to me and say, you work in a job where you're in the public, and you're working with kids, and you've got parents in a community, and they don't necessarily want to know that stuff about you.
Right.
You can't put that stuff out there. And I'm able to defend it and say, well, I work in central office. I'm just surrounded by paperwork all day long. Do you
Right.
get any of that being a classroom teacher? Do your students follow you online, and do they know what's going on?
They're in high school. There are a handful who I think follow me on Twitter, and a handful on Instagram, on my school accounts. But I don't know. There are kids who come and open up to me here and there. But I don't think it's based on that. I think it's just based on our connection in class. There have been times with certain classes that I have told them about some of, just that I've had issues with depression, and that if they have, then it's good to talk to a counselor, good to talk to somebody with professional training, but that I will never turn them away.
Yeah.
And just within the last 2 weeks, a kid who I didn't know, felt like he could open up to me, stopped in one day and was just like, I need somebody to talk to, and I can't think of anybody else who won't like turn me away. And so I sort of left class on autopilot, and we talked for a bit, and it was a good experience. And I don't know if it was me being open that led him to come and talk to me, or if just I don't know, he knew that he could talk to somebody. And I feel fortunate, or feel blessed, or feel whatever, that I am able to be that for some kid.
Yeah.
And I hope that throughout their school day, that every kid has some sort of an adult in the building that they feel that way about, even though I know there aren't.
Yeah.
And if it's not me, I hope it's another teacher, or a custodian, or a secretary in the front office, or an administrator. It's like they're sometimes I think we're so like, oh, it's all about teachers because that's what I am. But there's so many people, and everybody in that building is there because they love kids. They want what's best for kids. And it's just trying to find those ways to reach them and let them know that you are also a person.
Yeah. And it's a balancing act. It really is, because you can't just, put all of your stuff out there when knowing that they're kids, because they are kids.
Right. Yeah.
But one of the things, and I don't know if this is intentional on your part or not, but you're the play like a pirate guy, and you've got all kinds of, if people go to your website, and they'll see all kinds of protocols and all kinds of things that they can do in their class so that kids can play and
Right.
demonstrate understanding and learning. But one of the things I just recently did was I took a lot of your activities for kids and did them with all the teachers in my school district at the start of the school year. And we did it to try to get to know each other in a different way. And it was so powerful, the conversations that were coming as teachers were designing their own action figures, the action figure that would describe themselves, or using Lego to create something that's important to them, or just taking a lot of your activities that you use at times to assess historical figures or whatever, but doing it in a way where teachers were able to connect and open up about themselves, that we're now going to be able to relate on a real level. That I think that's what play does, is it lets people put their guards down. It lets them just be open and allows them to open up. So I don't know if you intentionally do that just to help kids get their guards down, because I think you have this gift of getting inside of people's heads in a good way and kind of tooling around a little bit and trying to see what's really in there. Do you see that as something that's a gift of yours?
I don't know if it's a gift. I do think it's something that I can see in people, and I think play does reach a lot of people, and then there are people, there are students, and there are adults who are like, just give me the information. I would really rather just do it. But I think the majority of people, it's like, if there is another way to do it, it's like they let their guard down. that they're like, this reminds me of when I was a kid. I can open up a little bit about this in a safe way, in a safe space. And whether they're doing it as part of a classroom assignment or a kind of get to know you thing where they get to talk about themselves a little bit, I think in either of those instances, they're going to feel something, and they're going to, and they're going to feel something positive. Like if I have to be saddled with some sort of label, if it associates me with Lego and rubber duckies and action figures and Muppets, it's like there are worse things to be associated with.
Right. True story.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, that guy cut me off in traffic, I hate him. It's like, oh, he cut me off in traffic, but his license plate says Kermit, so hey.
Can't be that bad. It was just crazy.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not messing with him either way.
Yeah.
So now there might be some people that are tuning in right now that are hearing all this, and they might be having a thought that this is way across the line because of two things. One, you're encouraging kids or adults to just play in school.
Mm-hmm.
B, you're talking about a bunch of stuff that we're not paid to talk about, and it's extremely uncomfortable. Just open the book, teach the curriculum, assess at the end of the year, and get it done. That's what teachers are supposed to do. And it's because we get all muddled in all this other stuff that just makes it impossible to get through anything anymore and makes the job so hard. I mean, how do you respond to that? I can see in your face what you're thinking, but tell us what goes through your head.
First of all, I love assessment. I love knowing what my students know and what they don't know and what I still have to teach them. I love, I'm a believer in some parts of standardized testing. It's like, I think it's really important to find out where your kids are at. And if we get like test scores back and I haven't taught my kids anything, then I feel like I'm not a good teacher. I might have entertained them. I might have had a safe, comfortable space for them, but I haven't taught them. And to me, I am getting paid to be a teacher. And that is really, that's my priority. But aside from the history, everything else in my day is to create a safe space, a place where students feel loved, a space where they feel safe expressing their own opinions, which might disagree with mine, a space where they are able to have a little bit of time with friends now and then. It's like, okay, so while we are designing this Funko Pop together, like I'm using my hands and my mind to do this, but I can also have a conversation with my friends about something that's important to me. I have two sons who they're a sophomore and a senior this year. And the stresses they have at school are immense. And I think teenagers, partially social media, but partially helicopter parenting and partially all the stressors we had in our lives when we were in high school. It's like they have a lot on their plates. And sometimes I think their teachers are like, my 90 minutes of your high school day are the most important part of your life. And they're not. And they shouldn't be. If my history class is the most important part of your day, that's a sad day.
Right.
You need to, I think teachers, sometimes we need to step back and see it's not all about us.
Yeah.
It's like my curriculum is important and it's super important and I love my curriculum, but I'm there to teach children. And if they aren't in an environment where they feel like they're safe and are able to learn and their social emotional learning is supported, then they're not going to learn as much. They're not going to learn as fast. They're not going to retain it. Their stress levels are going to be elevated. It's like, yes, you can say all the research says just do your damn job and teach, but all the research also says that students need to feel supported and safe. And I think there are a lot of different ways to do that, and teachers Like some teachers are awesome. I like greeting the kids at the door and a smile and a high five every day. And I'm like, I don't like touching kids, which sounds weird. But anyway, it'd sound worse if I said it the other way. But like, I don't have the coordination for high fives and like fist bumps. I would end up hitting somebody. I, but they know that they're welcome there, and they know that I love them, and they know that I'm going to tease them, and they know that they can tease me back up until a point, and that's the point where you're like, okay, we're done here. Let's go back to the 13th Amendment. Okay, there we go. But yeah, so I agree with the people that say that is what I'm being paid to do. But I think that the most effective way for me to do that is to engage them with humor and with some pop culture and with some things that are relevant to them that will let their guards down so that I can get some history in there.
It's good. Yeah. You said a lot in there, but it comes down to that relationship piece. And you talked about like the high fives and the fist bumps at the door, and that stuff is all great for people. But I think it's important for people to remember that if you do it just because somebody else is doing it, basically all you're doing now is following the next script. It's
right.
Because somebody else has told you to do it. Now you're going to do it. You still have to be true to you. If you are into the high fives and fist bumps and hugs, go for it. Go all in. But you got to be true to who you are, because a relationship is two ways. You have to be true to who you are in front of the kids and whoever you're with, and you also have to open them up to be real to you. And you talk about pop culture and things being relevant to them. How do you stay in tune with what's relevant? Because how many of your kids know who Kermit is before you introduce it?
They know who he is, but they're like, oh, my parents love that, or my great grandpa liked the Muppet Show. It's like, shut up, kid. Part of it, honestly, there are some things that I go to my sons and I'm like, what's Fortnite? What's TikTok? Which was all last year. It's no longer relevant. But like I pay attention. I mean, right now my sons are in high school, so I pay attention to what they're doing and what they're interested in. But also, so because of that, it's like one kid the other day had an Overwatch backpack, which is another video game that my sons have been playing. And so because I knew what they had been playing, I was able to talk to him about what's his favorite character that he likes to play. And I'm like, oh, I actually know that one. And like, we were able to talk about stuff like that. I am interested in a lot of the same pop culture things. Like I can have a conversation with anybody about any superhero movie and yeah. So but it has to be stuff I'm genuinely interested in. Like if it's their music, they can talk to another teacher about their music because I don't care. And I tell them that, I'm like, I'm not interested in your terrible music. And then they're like, oh, Rollins. It's true.
But you're real.
Go get me some food. Yeah.
That's awesome. So good. So good. So, I mean, we covered a lot. I feel like we went down some rabbit trails and came back out. And over here on my left, I got a whole script of things I wanted to get to, and some things, most of it we did. But I guess the last thing I want to hit on, and it's going to feel like a 180, but I think it's an important piece to all of this.
Yep.
Two important things that are related. One, you're a male teacher. Two, you're a male who's talked about depression and mental health concerns. And typically in America, we talk about how white males are privileged and we have lots of advantages. But I would argue in both of those regards, being a teacher and being someone who is opened up to mental health concerns and struggles, there are some definite stigmas attached. Mm-hmm. Do you recognize those? Do you feel those? If so, what's your response to it?
I do and I don't. It at the time when I was finally diagnosed with mental illness issues and
And we don't
it
even
gave it,
that's another thing. Like, what is it? You know?
yeah, I mean, so I had been genuinely suffering for a long time, and the
Yeah.
people around me knew that something wasn't right. Finding out what it was and finding out, it's a brain chemistry thing. It's not me being flawed as a person. It is that I have some brain chemistry that's pretty effed up and I need some medication. But the medication is there.
Mhm.
And sometimes it takes, trial and error trying to find the one that's right for you. But for a lot of people, there is some good, that there's some help out there. And by the time that came along, I was suffering so much that it was either I watch as everything around me falls apart and I die, or I take some medication and admit that that I have an illness, and I can move forward. And I guess it took me a few years to accept that, to the point where I could be open about it in public, like I was with friends and family and my dog,
Hmm.
but like on social media and stuff, I'm more likely to talk about it now. I'm more likely to um, speak up for other people who are in that situation. I'm more likely to reach out to a student who I think is going through some stuff, because they go through hard things, and a lot harder things than I ever had to as a kid. But I think some of the hard things I'm going through as an adult help me understand some of that. Um, and then the other part, I mean, I don't know. I think being being a white uh, male teacher, being a male teacher
In Utah.
um, in Utah, there is some stigma to that. It's like, why, like that was one of the challenges in deciding to become a teacher, because it's like, don't you want to take care of your family? Don't you want to like be a businessman or a lawyer or something? It's like, no, I don't, because I've done pieces of those things and I hated it and I didn't like the people around me, and I'd rather do something I believe in and really want to do. And I guess for both of those things, it comes down to um, my happiness is important, and I I think we all sacrifice a lot for other people, but there are times when um, you have to take care of yourself, and uh, that is going to help your mental health more. It's going to help your students more. It's going to help your own offspring
Mhm.
more. Those kids you made that time, like, it's going to help them. You're going to be better at everything you do if you take care of yourself. And just, yeah, but doing that without being selfish.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a balancing act. So,
Yeah. And convincing yourself that what you're doing is not selfish. Um,
mm-hmm,
that's a struggle. It really is a
mm-hmm,
challenge, you know? Um,
mm-hmm.
yeah. Oh, uh, all I can say to you right now is thank you. this is um, this is a conversation that personally I needed. I was craving having this conversation, just as a man, having somebody else to be able to reach out to and really talk to. Um, and it's one thing, you can text people and people send you the hearts and say, I got you, I got your back, and all that kind
Right.
of stuff. But
Yeah.
um, just being able to talk to a real person it's powerful. And I'm really, really, really hoping that other people out there are going to hear pieces of this and just latch onto it, um, and it can have some powerful change take place in their lives. As teachers, we're about changing destinies. We're about changing
Mm-hmm.
generations. And I'm believing right now that this conversation is not just going to help kids. There's a lot in here that's going to help kids, just in terms of
Mm-hmm.
profession. But I'm a firm believer that a lot of what was said today is going to change generations to come, just because of the adults that hear it and take some action to help themselves out as well. So I appreciate your honesty, your transparency, just your willingness to, when I reached out to you and said, hey, you want to talk to us? You were like, yeah, I'm in. Let's do it. It's without hesitation, no begging. It was just, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. That's awesome.
No, I think it's important. And I mean, I'm clearly not a professional, almost anything. Cause I'm a teacher, but yeah, I mean, there's help out there, I think was the important takeaway for me. And, I did medication first, and then it wasn't until this last January that I did any talk therapy,
Mm-hmm.
because I was like, I don't have issues. I just have, my chemical imbalance. But it turns out sometimes you need to talk about stuff.
Right.
So,
And as a guy, that's the part I hate the most. Hate it.
mm-hmm.
I hate it. I hate
Mm-hmm.
talking. I hate it. I love talking, like, if I've got a platform, I just want to go out there and like just show people how smart I am and how brilliant I am. But when I've got to start talking through stuff and feelings and all that,
Right.
I hate it.
Well, and I think we're raised. I think men are raised to bury their feelings. At least that's how I was raised.
Yeah.
So it's like, the end of a Pixar movie, I would feel an emotion, but other than that, it's like, why bother with feelings, So, but it's yeah. And then once, kind of like this, it's like, once the therapist opened me up, he's like, okay, our hour's up. I'm like, no, I'm still talking. So
You're my person.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But again, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I have a feeling this is going to open up doors for people, so I'm just going to encourage people to look you up. Look up your website, number one, to just get to see some of those activities and who you are as a teacher. Look up your book, Play Like a Pirate. You are all over the place, and then start following you on social media, because you are a funny dude.
I am a funny dude. Yeah.
You're a funny dude.
I am.
And you are venturing into the political waters a little bit here, and I like it. You are willing to say what you're thinking, and you always do it in a comical way, though. So even if people from disagree, they still have to chuckle a little bit. So I encourage people just to check you out on social media and become a cyber stalker from a distance. Just follow Quinn Rollins, because he's an awesome dude. So anything else you want to say before we wrap it up here?
I don't think so. I appreciate this. I think this is a good conversation that I think some people don't have somebody to have the conversation with. So yeah, hope it will help some people.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.